Muy buenos días. Can you please take your seats so we can begin today's session? Thank you. Thank you so much. It is a real pleasure to be here on our third day. Don't get us wrong when you see myself, my co-chairs, and Nico. This is still a very formal GEF Council meeting. This is a formal attire for the Pacific nations. Yes, Ambassador Fituri comes from the South Pacific, but I also come from the Pacific, from the Eastern Tropical Pacific. And yes, of course, we welcome Nico as well this morning with his attire. So thank you so much. I want to thank everybody to today's the 62nd Ldcf, 32nd Ldcf, Sscf meeting, and which is the final Ldcf, Sscf meeting for GEF 7. I would like to extend my special thanks to my co-chair, Ambassador Fituri, whose long history of engagement with the GEF and the Ldcf and Sccf has provided valuable perspectives during the GEF 8 Ldcf, Sscf strategy development process. Dear friends, today the focus of the council, of this council meeting is adaptation to climate change. Our ability to meet the 1.5 degree target is by no means certain, and in fact, the latest, the 6th IPCC report assessment state that this target is very likely to be exceeded. So missing the 1.5 degree target has extremely grave consequences for all communities across the planet. Countries with populations living below the poverty line, fragile communities living on marginal lands, and for low-lying islands, the very existence is a threat. We are also ready to witness a wide range of adverse impacts. And adaptation, in this context, adaptation is crucial now and will only continue to be so into the future. It is in this context I would like to thank you all for your active and constructive engagement during the recent concluded strategy development process for the Ldcf and Sccf for GEF 8. We'll be seeking your endorsement on this strategy today. As you all know, we have a bold, innovative, and ambitious strategy that clearly articulates the value addition for the Ldcf and Sccf. We have heard from both donors and recipients very much around the strategy and its innovation, especially the new dedicated window for adaptation for LOCs, and a separate window for innovation, technology transfer, and just, of course, something that is very much embedded, which is the private sector engagement. Both of them under the Sscf. And just, of course, as the CEO and chairperson of this council, I'm super happy about the multiple support through many different processes, conversations, and statements that we have received. But we need to appreciate this in a minimum manner and scale up. Particularly in terms of predictable funding for both funds. And after much consideration, we decided to hold the pledging event for these two funds in the near future. Most probably, we'll be promoting to do this in the Sharm el-Sheikh COP27. Now let me focus and go a little bit on the aspects of today's meeting. As you can probably have seen in the documents that were posted, we are bringing to your attention a very ambitious work program for approval with projects for a total of Ldcf requests of $72.4 million. With approval of this work program, I'm pleased to say that all 47 LDCs or 100% of the LDCs will be have support and approved. A very unique feature of this work program is the inclusion of one global project for all LDCs and 3 regional projects, 2 focusing in Africa and 1 on the Pacific LOCs. Also, the great Green Wall region adaptation project in Africa demonstrates excellent collaboration within us and the GCF under the long-term vision. Both the regional project in the Pacific and the global project are designed to help pool public and private resources to channel funding to resilient and sustainable development and just, of course, nature-based solutions, with the Ldcf grant playing a catalytic role in this context. These are being implemented by the Asian Development Bank and the World Bank as well. Now I want to step back and give a very short snapshot of what we've been able to do and achieve in GEF 7. Thanks again to your generous support, we are able to announce an impressive results. Projects approved in GEF 7, including the work program presented today, will deliver direct adaptation benefits to over 21 million people, of which 50% are female. The projects will bring over 3.2 million hectares of land under climate resilient management, and almost 900 policies and plans will be mainstream in terms of climate adaptation and climate resilience, and nearly 700,000 people will be trained on identifying and managing climate risks and adaptation measures. I would like to highlight the example of Benin Project shared with the AMR, where 72% of all people will train and improve in agricultural practices, which are mainly women. And the women income in this, in the context of this region increased 30% compared to the start of the project. But most importantly, building on the successful of the Ldcf program in GEF 8, we're ready to do much more to support climate adaptation in GEF 8. The business plan for fiscal year 2023 and the budget for Ldcf and Sscf present our vision to kickstart the GEF 8 with a strong programming for both of them, enhance country engagement, and just, of course, something that donors, nations strongly recommend is the visibility, the higher visibility of what we do. Also, I would like to make my sincerely thanks to Ms. Madeleine Diouf. She's the LDC chair who has been a very strong supporter of the Ldcf and also provide keen insights in terms of guidance with the new strategy. Her leadership is impressive, admirable, and I got the chance to visit her country in Senegal last month to see an LDC project. Nico, can we see the... Yeah, this is Gustavo's presentation. Yeah, the pictures are coming up. Okay. So as I was saying, I was in Dakar not long ago, and I was able to see this Ldcf project, and I want to share some photos I took over there. There we are. So this, you may not, can we expand the screen? So this is an LDC project that works, yes, thanks, in strengthening resilient and productive landscapes in centered Senegal. As I was saying a couple of days ago in my introductory remarks, I was extremely impressed by the work that the FAO, the government of Senegal, particularly the Ministry of Environment. And I want to stop just 1 second here. I really get impressed when I don't know if I'm talking with an official from the Ministry of Agriculture or Environment, because this is an element that constantly comes to us very strongly. You know, the agendas from environment and the agendas for agriculture are very different. And here I was confronted with the best of both worlds, where the officials from the Ministry of Environment in Senegal were leading this initiative, working with FAO in terms of climate adaptation in the dry lands. As I said, this project aimed for in dealing with climate adaptation and climate resilience in very dry lands, which, as I said the other day, they are in the front line of the expansion of deserts and droughts. Here you can see I took this photo, and this is a very good photo of what we are doing. Two things here are very important. On the right-hand side, there's a fence there. On the right-hand side, you see the landscape overgrazed by livestock. And the impact of climate change will make these lands unbearable. No production may be there. On the other side of the fence, you see the project, where the improved management of pasture through innovative techniques has generated the possibility to cope with drought and climate change. And just, of course, over there you see not just the GEF, you see a small grant, you see the international cooperation, NGOs, all together working in ways that can guarantee us that these landscapes would be managed in a way that people can cope with a changing climate. And just, of course, many of the things that were done there were done through women. Another very important element is the farmers' school concept. Very impressive. You know, here, the experts and technicians are training trainers to train other people on how they can do agriculture and livestock development in the context of climate change. And I was extremely impressed by the work that this concept of the farmer schools is doing at the very basic of what we do and want to see, and it is super impressive. Probably Madeleine can share us a little bit more on what they do. And this is a good example of the things that the GEF does. Once more, the GEF and the agencies, and this, very important partnership. We're changing the life of people at the village level. Unfortunately, we are not changing the life of people at the landscape, seascape level. And this is the challenges for us. Working in the Sahel nations, supporting the Great Green Wall, this is as important as working in Central America, where definitely land degradation, climate change, and insecurity has become this very toxic combination that makes people to migrate to the north. So I came out very well impressed about what I saw at the ground, and yes, of course, this year I will be encouraging some council members to join us in some of the field visits with the agencies. Also, I think during council meeting, we should have the opportunity to give the floor to the agencies so they can tell us, some of the very interesting things that they do. I think that this is an innovative idea that I would like to explore with you all, because there's a lot of very interesting possibilities for council members to exchange with the agencies. They are all around us. They endure 3-4 days, and we are not able to bring them into some of the exchanges that we do. And this is something that I will put to your consideration. I came out of Dakar, Senegal, central Senegal, with a lot of hope and optimism. And just, it was great to see this baobab tree in the sunset. And I would, with this, I would like to close my welcoming remarks for this, the second, 32nd Ldcf and Sscf. I would like to pass it now to my co-chair for his welcoming remarks. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you, Carlos Manuel, for giving me the floor. I think the fact that the dress code for the front table is basically the same, I think underscores the fact that there is unity and there is alignment between the GEF and a Pacific small island developing state who is a recipient of the generosity of our partners. Now, I just want to, wearing my hat as a council member for our Pacific constituency, I want to say a few quick words about how important adaptation for my constituency and how crucial these two funds we will discuss today, the Ldcf and the Sccf, are. The seats are very appreciative to have been given the opportunity to actively engage in the consultations for the GEF 8 strategy for the Ldcf and the Sscf. Both Caroline and I participated. We feel the strategy has excellent elements from a seats perspective. As you all are aware, currently there are no multilateral climate funds dedicated to the adaptation needs of seats. The strategy you will endorse today is groundbreaking in proposing a dedicated seats window under the Sccf. While we congratulate the GCF on developing this strategy, we really hope that donors will step up and resource these two funds, both the Ldcf and the Sccf. Now, contextualizing my comments based on my own country's experience, Samoa was a major beneficiary of the LDC funds, and we know exactly the importance of having a dedicated fund for the adaptation needs, because it gives us LDCs at the time a sense of certainty, a sense of guarantee that you will have an allocation for your adaptation needs. Samoa graduated out of the LDC category on the 1st of January 2014. That's a fact. Now, we went to bed on the 31st of December 2013. Everyone was excited. There was celebration that we were going to graduate out of the LDC category. Everybody expected that when you wake up the next morning, things will be different. After all, we are no longer a least developed country. We are going to be a full developing country. Well, call it what you want, regrettably or whatever, but for me, when I woke up the next morning, I was still sleeping in the same bed, in the same house, with the same people, with the same economic and environment challenges. The moral of my story is, while we can graduate out of being a least developed country, we will never be able to graduate out of the challenges that we face, given our vulnerability. That is a given. And we didn't choose to be where we are, so it was not a matter of choice. It was, I guess, by design. So I think I just want to share that aloud, because I think it's really important for us, therefore, hopefully that there will be a dedicated window to finance the adaptation needs of small island developing countries. I know that there is some people have spoken aloud in terms of the vulnerability, but that's our reality. whatever way you want to see it, you have to come and live in Samoa or in Tuvalu to know that once the cyclone hits, it really pushes back whatever your achievements have been for almost how many years. For other countries, maybe because of their sizes, it can have an impact, but not as major as when it hits us. So I just want to share that aloud. This is family, and we are taking a new step. This is GEF 8. And I just want I just hope, and this will be my final year with GEF. If there is anything I would like to achieve out of the many years of my association with GEF, is the appreciation and understanding that there are some countries who are less fortunate than others, who need the empathy, not the sympathy. That's what I said in the first day. And that hopefully there will be appetite to support and adopt the new proposed strategy, both for the LDCs and also for small island developing states. I rest my case. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Ambassador, thank you so much. And with this, I will go over to our second agenda item, which is the adoption of the agenda. I will pass the floor to Ambassador Futuri, who will be chairing this session. Over to you, Co-Chair.
Thank you, Carlos. The provisional agenda has already been circulated to all council members as document GEF/Ldcf.Sccf.32/01. The floor is open for any council members who may want to propose an item to be considered under other business. I see no hands up, so I take it that the council is prepared to adopt the agenda for the meeting as presented in document GEF/Ldcf.Sccf.32/01. So our agenda has been adopted. Thank you so much. Let's move on to agenda item 3. This is the opening remarks by the LDC Chair. On your behalf, we have a pleasure in inviting Ms. Madeline Doof, who is the Chair of the Least Developed Countries Group and Head of the Climate Change Division, Ministry of Environment and Sustainable Development, Republic of Senegal, to give her opening remarks. Madam Doof, you have the floor. Thank you.
Merci. Merci, distingué président, co-président et ambassadeur Futuri de Samoa. Merci, monsieur le PDG, pour votre visite au Sénégal, PDG Carlos Manuel Rodriguez, et également pour le partage des réalités d'exécution que vous avez montré ce matin lors de votre visite, les travaux avec lesquels les agences ont accompagné les communautés pour leur adaptation et pour aussi accroître leur résilience face au changement climatique. Je tenais à vous inviter, à vous remercier, monsieur le PDG, Carlos Manuel Rodriguez, président du Fonds mondial pour l'environnement, pour m'avoir invité à m'adresser au Conseil du Fonds Ldcf et du Fonds Sccf. Cette déclaration que je vais faire met en avant le partenariat fructueux de longue date entre le groupe des pays les moins avancés et le Fonds mondial pour l'environnement. Et également, salue l'importance que vous continuez à accorder aux besoins, priorités et préoccupations des pays les moins avancés en matière d'adaptation, de résilience face au changement climatique. Permettez-moi de commencer mon propos en félicitant les membres du Conseil du FEM, les pays et les agences pour la mise en œuvre réussie de la stratégie d'adaptation au changement climatique du FEM 7. Je crois qu'avec l'approbation des projets proposés à ce Conseil, le fonds PMA, le Ldcf, a atteint une nouvelle hauteur très importante et appréciable. Je suis très heureuse que le fonds PMA ait programmé plus d'un demi-milliard de dollars au cours de la période M7 et servi avec succès les 47 pays éligibles, ce sont les PMA. Cela répond véritablement à l'objectif du Ldcf de ne laisser aucun PMA à côté. Mes remerciements particuliers vont également au secrétariat du FEM pour la sensibilisation proactive des pays les moins avancés. Je suis heureuse d'apprendre que le taux d'utilisation des ressources du fonds PMA pour les projets nationaux au cours de la période M7 a atteint plus de 99%. Le soutien du fonds PMA réduit non seulement la vulnérabilité au changement climatique des pays les moins avancés, de leur communauté, mais contribue également à renforcer la résilience, surtout en cette période post-Covid, et également la résilience face à d'autres phénomènes, à d'autres formes de catastrophes. Cette réunion du Conseil est également pour moi une occasion importante d'approuver la nouvelle stratégie de programmation de l'adaptation au changement climatique du FEM 8, qui a été préparée de manière inclusive, participative et transparente. La stratégie reflète les priorités des pays les moins avancés et les priorités des États insulaires en développement. Lors des récentes réunions sur le climat à Bonn, le secrétariat du FEM a organisé 2 événements de sensibilisation avec le groupe des pays les moins avancés et aussi le groupe des pays des États insulaires sur cette nouvelle stratégie. Ces rencontres ont été utiles pour préparer les pays à mieux comprendre le FEM 8, mais également à renforcer notre vision commune sur l'adaptation transformationnelle. Nous saluons le doublement du plafond du fonds PMA, qui va passer de 10 milliards de dollars à 20 milliards de dollars pour chaque PMA. Nous soutenons également pleinement le guichet de financement spécial pour les États insulaires en développement dans le cadre du Sscf. Car nous reconnaissons l'extrême vulnérabilité aux impacts du changement climatique des pays insulaires. Au nom du groupe des PMA, je tiens à exprimer notre soutien ferme à la réussite de la mise en œuvre de ces stratégies fort importantes pour nos pays. Il est crucial que ces stratégies soient efficaces via la mise à disposition de ressources appropriées. Je demande respectueusement à nos partenaires de fournir les ressources financières au fonds PMA et au fonds Sscf afin d'améliorer encore la prévisibilité et aussi la flexibilité d'un meilleur accès à ces fonds. Pour les pays les moins avancés, le FEM est notre partenaire de choix. nous militons pour l'amélioration de son accès et d'un traitement diligent des requêtes de financement, ce que nous connaissons déjà. Il est important pour nous que le fonds PMA soit à 100% pour les PMA et qu'il n'ait pas besoin de compétir pour accéder à ces ressources, vu les capacités des pays les moins avancés. Mais les PMA ont montré, avec le GEF, qu'ils avaient une capacité d'absorption pour utiliser pleinement le fonds PMA en vue de sa mise en œuvre pour l'adaptation. Nous ferons mieux et beaucoup plus avec le fonds PMA 8. Ces fonds sont essentiels pour nous, les PMA. Mon pays, le Sénégal, que vous avez eu la possibilité de visiter, et dans d'autres pays que je connais bien, ont grandement bénéficié du précieux soutien du fonds PMA. Je suis aussi optimiste que le Sscf renouvelé ne sera plus sans ressources financières et permettra de soutenir les pays les États insulaires afin de catalyser le transfert de technologie et l'innovation du secteur privé pour l'adaptation dans ces pays fortement également vulnérables. Bien que nous soyons tous profondément préoccupés par les impacts du changement climatique, je pense que le rapport du GIEC récemment montre cela, nous pensons que la stratégie du FEM 8 pour le fonds PMA et le Sccf nous donne encore davantage d'espoir d'une meilleure et efficace prise en compte de la vulnérabilité de nos pays, de nos communautés, et que la communauté internationale est à côté de nos pays pour nous accompagner dans cette lutte contre les impacts du changement climatique. Je vous remercie de votre attention.
I thank the LDC chair, Madeline, for opening remarks. And I want to give the floor to Carlos Manuel for his comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And with this, we entered into our agenda item number 4, which is the GEF programming strategy on adaptation to climate change for the least developed countries fund, and the special climate change fund for the GEF 8 period of July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2026, and operational improvements. I would like to ask and invite Ms. Aoki to present the document GEF/LDCF Sscf 32/04/Ref1. Cheese, you got the floor, and welcome.
Thank you, Carlos Manuel. I'm very pleased to present the Ldcf and Sccf programming strategy and operational improvements for the GEF 8 period, which will be from next month, July 1, 2022 to June 30th of 2026. So parallel to the replenishment process, we have actually undertaken a consultative process to develop and discuss this strategy in front of you, and what improvements we would like to have on the way the funds, the Ldcf and Sscf, operate. Since the fall of 2021, we have had 3 strategy meetings and a number of additional informal consultations. What I'm presenting to you here is a strategy that was agreed during the 3rd programming strategy meeting held on 26th of April of this year. So today's presentation will focus on the highlights of the strategy, the programming priorities for both the Ldcf and the Sccf, and the agreed financial scenarios and the operational elements.
The green button.
The green button. Let me quickly summarize the highlights of the strategy. So the goal of the strategy is to facilitate transformational adaptation in developing countries towards achieving the Paris Agreement's global goal on adaptation. First, this strategy that's in front of you is building on the strengths of the two funds and the unique value proposition, which are articulated in the document and vouched by the independent evaluations that were presented to Council within the past year and a half. The two funds are providing targeted support in key priority themes and to address gaps in adaptation finance, which I will present a little bit further. And the strategy stresses inclusiveness through the whole of society approach, and it's actually built to be quite agile. The second element I wanted to highlight is that the strategy presents a major upgrading opportunity to catalyze transformational adaptation and contribute to the Paris Agreement goal on adaptation. 3, the funds are positioned to generate multiple benefits, which we will track and report as real markers for climate change, biodiversity, and desertification. The strategy is also capitalizing upon opportunities for alignment with the GEF Trust Fund, the Green Climate Fund, Adaptation Fund to mobilize finance at scale for adaptation. Finally, the strategy is informed by science and by real opportunities and perspectives of the countries. IPCC has made clear call for urgency of climate action and raising ambition. The strategy will be a new chapter for the GEF to contribute with a focus on the most vulnerable countries and communities. The strategy presents 4 priority themes of programming under the Ldcf and Sccf, building on the positive experiences of the funds, as well as the emerging needs, particularly for climate change adaptation. The first theme is agriculture, food security, and health. This has a heightened focus on community-level engagement. We are looking at activities that can support agroecological transformation, such as agroecosystem management, food value chain improvements, crop insurance, resilient livelihoods, as well as vector and waterborne diseases. The second priority is water. And here, we're going to focus on the range of water-related issues through which climate change impacts will manifest, both directly and indirectly, and also applying an integrated water resource management approach. This will include focus on freshwater availability as well as quality, water storage and conservation, hydrological modeling and water resource planning, as well as policies that can support more efficient water use. The third theme is early warning in climate information systems. And this covers a broad spectrum of activities ranging from measures that can save lives and infrastructure to supporting crop practices or crop pest outbreaks. The key here is to really expand access and aim for greater user uptake of the technologies and information that the systems can provide. The fourth theme is we have nature-based solutions, which are a distinctive and foundational element of the GEF's adaptation portfolio, as well as the portfolio of the GEF Trust Fund. They have the potential to deliver adaptation benefits and a range of additional multiple benefits contributing to the resilience of people and ecosystems. As climate change impacts are wide-ranging, these themes are not an exhaustive list. Of course, if a country has an adaptation priority as identified in the NAP or NAPA or national strategy, we will, of course, look into supporting that particular priority. Now I will go through the main elements of the Ldcf programming strategy. The Ldcf, as Madeleine just described, has a distinct value of being the only dedicated fund for the least developed countries. The LDCs are among the most vulnerable to climate impacts, not only because of their exposure to climate extremes, but also due to their limited capacity as well as systemic barriers that we all know limit adaptation action at large scale. In light of this, and with the goal of supporting transformational impacts, the strategy will have 3 priority areas, as shown in this slide. The first priority area is scaling up finance. This priority will aim to support the need of catalyzing resources by addressing the systemic barriers through policy coherence, strengthening institutional capacity, innovative financial mechanisms, and tools and metrics. And the second theme is strengthening innovation and private sector engagement. Projects under this priority will support innovation and adaptation by creating opportunities with technology innovators and private sector partners, including micro, small, and medium enterprises, which are mostly the engines of private sector engagement in LDCs as well as the countries that we operate in. The third priority area is fostering partnership for inclusion and whole of society approach. The Ldcf will support proactive inclusion of various groups as key stakeholders for locally led adaptation from bottom up and encourage their engagement as meaningful partners at the project level. The Ldcf remains flexible to support other adaptation priorities and needs as identified by LDCs and as per COP guidance. So this is the theory of change for the Ldcf. I'm not going to go through this, but please know that there is a very well-defined theory of change that will take us from the problem statement to the goal. This is actually outlining the pathway for the transformational adaptation that we're aiming to achieve. And this is highlighting the intervention scales to support the thematic priorities for Ldcf, which are ecosystem-based, value chain-based, and the spatial scale, which cuts across rural, urban, coastal areas. And this is also showing the transformational levers, which will be strengthened to achieve outcomes and the ultimate adaptation goals. And these transformational levers are including policy coherence and mainstreaming, strengthened governance, and knowledge exchange and collaboration. Cross-cutting considerations are gender equality and youth empowerment. During the process of strategy development and consultations, we looked into different modes and models on resource mobilization. And through the conversations for the resources of the Ldcf, the donors and participants have agreed to go with the multi-year pledging modality with voluntary contributions. This will enhance the predictability of flow of funds and is also aligned with the Glasgow Climate Pact, which call for multi-year pledging. Countries that are not in a position to make multi-year pledging, as well as intermittent donors, can still contribute to the fund according to the contribution schedule that would suit the needs as well as the circumstances of the donor countries. Now, the two financial scenarios for the Ldcf have been agreed in the third strategy meeting, and this is what we're presenting here. Scenario A, at $1 billion over the next 4-year period, it will be the floor for the Ldcf and GEF 8 period. Scenario B is a little bit more ambitious scenario, which is at $1.3 billion. And this particular scenario is striving towards parity between adaptation and mitigation in the GEF 8 period. Scenario B will enable more robust support for regional global initiatives, as well as additional resources for the Challenge Program for Adaptation Innovation and national projects. The initial cap per LDC will be increased to $20 million under both scenarios. And this is also aligned with the Glasgow Pact to double the provision of adaptation finance. The scenarios also include the requested resources for the dedicated programs, as well as the administrative expenses, which will continue to be prepared as an annual business plan and budget to be approved by this council. And you will be actually looking at a budget and business plan as part of the deliberations perhaps later this afternoon. Let me now turn to the Sccf. The focus of the Sccf was a topic that we discussed very extensively through the consultation process. Moving forward, the Sccf will focus on 2 underserved priority areas. The first area is climate change adaptation needs of small island developing states. And the second priority area is innovation, technology transfer, and private sector engagement for all countries. The 2 areas represent a significant opportunity for urgently needed and catalytic climate adaptation finance. I would now like to spend a couple of slides from here on and elaborate a bit more on why Sccf's focus on supporting adaptation in SIS is warranted moving forward. As we all know, SCs are among the most vulnerable countries in the world, but need to compete for adaptation finance in the current structure of climate support. Based on Germany's request, we conducted an analysis of funding in SCs across the Ldcf, Sccf, the Green Climate Fund, the Adaptation Fund, as well as the PPCR, which is the adaptation window of the climate investment funds. And let me find the key findings of this comparative analysis of adaptation support being provided by multilateral channels. First, there is a significant disparity across various SCs in the funding received. There are also gaps in support, with some non-LDC SCs receiving actually no funding from these adaptation funds for national projects. The situation is actually quite different between the non-LDCs and the LDC SCs. The LDC SCs have received an order of magnitude more funding from the Ldcf compared to the Sccf. This actually goes to show the value of dedicated ring-fenced support for vulnerable countries where they do not have to compete for resources. And finally, there are many examples where the Ldcf and Sccf funding paved the way for subsequent funding by other funds such as the GCF. We have examples of sequential support from the GCF on Samoa, in Timor-Leste, directly building on the work supported by the Ldcf. This slide shows the adaptation support at national projects. I talked about the disparity in support among different countries. Black squares represent the Ldcf and Sccf support. The green squares are by the GCF, and the light gray ones were by the Adaptation Fund. We also captured a number of projects, funding amounts, as well as types of support that are being provided. And we did this analysis for the Pacific SCs, the Caribbean SCs, as well as the Indian Ocean and African SCs. And the story is the same. Clearly, the LDC SCs are benefiting from the larger number of projects, more funding sources, as well as the amount of resources provided. There are disparities in support and gaps in adaptation support. And let me also draw your attention in terms of the number of projects that the GEF has been able to support in the LDCs. We also would like to be able to continue to deliver strong adaptation support and also focus our support for the each and every SCs beyond the LDC SCs. Now, this is the slide that shows the National Adaptation Project coverage in the Caribbean. It clearly shows that there are many SCs that have not received any adaptation support from the funds. And even among countries that have benefited from support, there are large disparities in funding received. At the very top, you see Haiti, which is the Caribbean's only LDC with 7 Ldcf projects. It's worth noting that the greater number of projects in the country means that we are able to address adaptation in a greater number of vulnerable sectors. Another topic we discussed very extensively in the consultation process is how are we going to optimize the Sscf and its support. The consensus has emerged as the fund should provide focused support in tandem with the unique value proposition. This option of providing focused support is looking at the key areas of competitive advantage and gaps in the multilateral climate finance architecture. The strategic focus includes addressing critical climate change adaptation priority for the SCs and the innovation, technology transfer, and private sector engagement. This is the financial scenarios that have been also agreed on the 26th of April. As we know, there have been only one donor that has supported the Sscf in the GEF 7 period. Despite having a very good strategy, as well as very good performance, which we will show you during the AMR agenda item later today, the Sscf could only provide limited support to countries. In order for the Sscf to meet its mandate as a financial mechanism and also be responsive to recent COP decisions, it's very important for the Sscf to be financed properly. There is a key issue to ensure accountability of the Sscf in the GEF 8 period and beyond. So the two financial scenarios in front of us are taking into account its two funding windows. One for the non-LDCs, it's window A, and the other window for technology transfer, window B, for all countries. Scenario A, over the next 4-year period, which is the floor for the Sscf support, is $200 million, and the more ambitious scenario B is $400 million. For window A, we are introducing an initial cap for national projects in non-LDC SIDS. So each of the 30 SIDS will be set at $3 million per country of the national allocation under the low scenario. If we are able to go for the more ambitious scenario, $6.5 million per country will be allocated to each of the 30 SIDS that are not LDCs. Sscf window B will cover projects in all developing countries that are focused on technology transfer, innovation, and private sector engagement, as well as the very popular and successful challenge program for adaptation innovation. We have also included a line for regional and global initiatives. Finally, there will be some shared expenses across the two windows, notably for the dedicated program, which we'll present shortly, and the administrative budget. So let me very briefly go over additional operational improvements for the Ldcf and Sscf in the GEF 8 period. The strategy builds on the improvements made in GEF 7. And I think many of you might recall that there was a significant change to the way the funds are operated to go from the approval by mail to consideration of the work program by council at each council. Additional elements to be implemented in the GEF 8 include tracking and reporting on real markers for climate change, biodiversity and desertification, resource caps for countries under the Ldcf, and its expansion to the Sccf for SIDS, ability to support major initiatives and regional and global efforts with a cap, opportunities for synergy with the GEF Trust Fund, and also tracking of aspirational targets and ceiling to address the agency concentration issue. And this was part of the policy recommendations for the GEF Trust Fund, and we will apply the same tracking of aspirational targets and ceiling. For the Ldcf, it's worth noting that MDBs and IFAD already have a quarter share of the entire portfolio. And we are happy to see that the share of the multilateral development banks has also increased in the GEF 7 period. And also in GEF 7, no agency has more than 1/3 of the portfolio because there is much more balanced engagement of agencies as well as the capacity of the agencies to address adaptation priorities have also increased significantly over the past several years. Here is a snapshot of the results framework for the Ldcf and Sscf. Results will continue to be monitored and reported to the Ldcf and Sscf Council as projects reach inception, midterm, and at completion, in line with the overall GEF policy on results-based management. The two funds will share the same results framework, and it captures progress on adaptation across GEF's adaptation portfolio. We're introducing 5 core indicators, an expanded list of sub-indicators corresponding to each core indicators, as well as meta information on each project that could capture a little bit more nuanced impacts at the project community level, as well as some qualitative data. Sex disaggregation is required and track for all relevant indicators. And also, based on requests that have been made during the previous council, direct beneficiaries will also be age disaggregated and reported. This is my last slide. This slide summarizes the 3 dedicated programs that have been introduced to enhance the impact and effectiveness of the Ldcf and Sscf. There are 3 programs. One is a program on communication and visibility enhancements. This is something the council has been repeatedly asking us to put into place, so we're introducing this as a dedicated program. And this will entail developing a communication strategy and allocating necessary human and financial resources for its rollout as well as implementation. Having this will ensure that while we're doing right things, we're also being effective at the same time in communicating the impact and lessons learned and raising the visibility of the funds, as well as the support that the countries are putting on the table. The second one is a program on outreach and capacity support for LDC and CIS for planning and programming. This one is actually about facilitating access, which has become an important issue within the climate negotiations. This dedicated program will support them on project design through upstream workshops and developing national investment plans, perhaps in collaboration with the other funds as opportunities arise. The issues of additional support will strengthen maintaining capacity so that the countries can also strive for a higher level of ambition in climate action. And finally, a program on learning and coordination at the fund and portfolio level, which can contribute to enhancing the learning opportunities to enrich adaptation support within and across climate adaptation funds and initiatives. So with that, thank you very much, and we will be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much to you, Cheese. And with this, I would like to invite council members to address the floor if I feel appropriate. I got Switzerland, Netherlands, and Germany. Gabriela, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Carlos, and thank you, Chis, for the presentation. Let me start with thanking Ambassador Faturi. I couldn't agree with you more. We agree with your statement very much, and that's also why Switzerland, thanks for the consultative process, has been very engaged over the consultative process, further focusing the Sscf strategy to exactly what Ambassador Faturi was mentioning, and she has presented very nicely that there is currently a gap in the financing structure as we see it. SIDS are underfunded or have challenges accessing funds in other multilateral funds for now, focused on adaptation. So we very much welcome the focus that you're suggesting for the Sscf, and we fully agree on the strategy proposed also for the Ldcf. We can also support the proposed multi-year pledging based on voluntary contributions model, as you presented, Chiz, and we very much welcome also the policy improvements, for example, enhanced tracking of Rio markers, etc. So very much welcome that, also your efforts to address concentration and so on. But yeah, let me end. So the one donor that has been providing funding to the Sscf the last years has been Switzerland, and we made that point very clear in the consultative process already, and I want to make that point again here today in the Council. Switzerland is ready to continue its support to the Sscf. We're also ready to significantly increase it, but we have a very clear requirement from our government. We can only do that if at least one other contributor steps up and puts money in that fund. And I think the case for it is clear. So we really call for additional contributions to the Sscf. We very much welcome many who have stepped up in the context of COP26 for Ldcf contributions. But we need to see something for the Sscf as well. And if we can't get there, it will be very challenging, and I think all our political leaders will have a problem if we arrive at COP27 with a fund focused on adaptation, with a strategy focused on SIDS and private sector engagement, slowly dying out. I honestly don't think that's where we want to land, so I urge you to go back home and try to find funding for the Sscf. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gabriela, for your statement. Thank you so much. So I got Netherlands, followed by Solomon Islands. René, the floor is yours.
Yes, Carlos, well, thank you very much. First, we congratulate the Secretariat for its efforts that went into developing this important strategy on climate adaptation. Finland and the Netherlands support the new strategy. We thank the Secretariat for taking our and other donors' comments and recommendations well into account throughout the whole process of developing this new strategy. And we hope that this great, fine cooperation may also continue in the future. Drawing on the latest IPCC conclusions, it's clear that the least developed countries and small island developing states or large ocean nations face increasing climate impacts, and that more should be done to address their immediate needs. The LDCF can and must play an important catalytic role in this regard. We're also pleased to note that the strategy is grounded based on the most recent scientific findings, and we really appreciate that a comprehensive analysis of climate risks and uncertainties, especially at the local level, is crucial to generate long-term solutions. Enhancing support for projects that engage with stakeholders at the local level is essential, and the whole of society approach therefore plays an important role in this adaptation strategy. What we feel is a key element of the adaptation agenda is increasing the accessibility and eligibility of finance within multilateral funds such as Ldcf, and making sure it has impact and lands at the local level, reaching the most vulnerable communities and people most in need. We therefore look forward to getting regular updates on the results of the implementation of this new strategy, and we also look forward to communications by GEF, Ldcf, to highlight the impact of the fund and its new strategy, and to also improve its visibility as outlined in the strategy. So thanks a lot.
Thanks to you, René. Now I'll pass it over to Solomon Islands, followed by Germany. Colin, you got the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Co-Chair, and thank you and good morning all. Just to once again, I think coming from a constituency that is largely made up of 14 SIDS countries, we would like to really register our deep appreciation for not only the paper, the strategy, but the focus on both the small island developing state, the ocean countries, as well as the least developed countries. We also have members who are least developed country status that includes Solomon Islands. You know, when we began our council meeting and looking at the statement made by our CEO on this, spoke of hope. This basically gives hope. This gives inspiration where many of our people, especially, this is a people-centered fund, and I just want to thank all partners who have contributed, and I would like to join Switzerland in encouraging others to come forward. It has a human face to it, and we just want to once again register our appreciation, certainly as Ambassador Feturi in his opening remark on this particular agenda item spoke about predictability, certainty. I think it more or less sends a message that the small island developing states and the least developed countries are not alone, you know, when we look at the IPCC. So it's just a matter of appealing for more money, but thanking everyone for putting this framework together and having a focus on the small island developing states and LDCs. Thank you very much.
Thanks to you, Colin. And now I give the floor to Germany, followed by the US. Sylvia, you got the floor. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Germany appreciates the efforts taken by the GEF Secretariat to advance the strategic direction for both the Ldcf and the Sccf, and we fully endorse the strategy as it currently stands. We're also looking forward to the projects that will fill it with life. We also welcome the agreement of the Ldcf to move into a multi-year pledging modality while keeping the flexibility needed from GEF 8 onwards. We further welcome the strong focus on private sector mobilization and policy coherence. We would like to reiterate that we see a necessity to mainstream private sector engagement wherever possible. The Ldcf should make best use of its grants to ease hurdles that prevent private sector engagement. That way, the Ldcf grants can help best to boost innovation. The development of NAPAs and NAPs have laid an important foundation for sustainable adaptation planning in LDCs and non-LDCs. Now it is crucial to take NAP efforts to implementation with a particular focus on tracking adaptation action, which means M&E. We very much appreciate the more detailed presentation on the respective funding scenarios for both the Ldcf and the Sccf. It is intended that the Sccf window A, the support for SIDS, and B, innovation, technology transfer, and private sector, will receive similar share of funding, while countries can earmark their contributions to either window. It would be helpful for us to understand how the Secretariat seeks to ensure that funding is balanced, and maybe also why parity is essential. We are highly aware of the specific circumstances of SIDS that render them particularly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, and we understand the interest in a dedicated SIDS window under the Sccf. We also acknowledge, as Switzerland, that the current model of the Sccf, with Switzerland as the only donor, is not sustainable. We would still be very grateful to receive further information from the GEF Secretariat how it will organize the transition phase until sufficient funding is secured to ensure the future of the Sccf. We would here like to know more about the possible consequences for the Sccf in the absence of funding by COP27. Finally, a big thank you to Shiz for giving us this fantastic overview on the different funding availabilities for SIDS under the various climate funds. This was tremendously helpful, and we would be very happy if you could share the presentation with us, or even better, maybe a short piece in writing, because this could really help us back home. Thank you.
Thanks to you, Silvia, for your remarks and your government's commitment to these funds. I'll now pass it over to the U.S. I think that Sheila is online. Is that correct, Nico? Yes. Oh, there you are. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm getting a little bit of an echo, but I'll try to power through it. Thank you so much for allowing me to join remotely. I'm not too far away in Silver Spring, Maryland, but this flexibility has made it possible for me to tune into today's proceedings. I'd also like to express my thanks to our Madam LDC Chair for her remarks, to Ambassador Faturi, and to the GEF CEO and Chair, Carlos Manuel, and to, of course, the Secretariat for putting forward a well thought out and transformational programming strategy for the Ldcf and Sccf. I'd also welcome Switzerland in my appreciation for the consultative and transparent process that brought this strategy forward. It was very helpful. Having just returned home from 2 weeks of intense discussions on climate adaptation in Bonn, along with many of you, I'm sure, the challenges and ways to address these challenges as highlighted in the strategy are fresh in my mind. And as stated in the strategy document, the goal of the new programming strategy is to facilitate transformational adaptation in developing countries towards achieving the Paris Agreement's global goal on adaptation. In Bonn, we launched a number of new processes, including substantive work towards achieving the global goal on adaptation that will now benefit from the new programming strategy put forward by the GEF for the Ldcf and Sccf. Throughout much of the 2-week session of the subsidiary bodies, both in the negotiating rooms and during the various workshops and dialogues, we heard the importance of improving access to adaptation finance and of broadening the sources of finance available to SIDS in particular. These conversations also highlighted the importance of innovative and flexible climate financing that could be targeted at countries experiencing loss and damage from climate change. As such, the United States welcomes the new GEF programming strategy on adaptation to climate change for the Ldcf and the Sccf for the GEF 8 period. And we particularly appreciate the innovative approach to the Sccf window A, which for the first time provides a resource dedicated to the particular circumstances of non-LDC SIDS. We also fully support the focus themes outlined in the strategy on agriculture, food security, health, water, nature-based solutions, and climate information. Broadening the pool of resources and mainstreaming adaptation are themes that come up repeatedly in discussions on adaptation finance, and the strategies focus on the need for a whole of government and whole of society approach, including greater private sector resource mobilization, is very welcome. We look forward to future discussions and events during the GEF 8 period, and I'll note that we have heard Switzerland's appeal for additional donors to the Sccf. Thank you very much.
Oh, thanks to you, Sheila. Now go over to Sano, CSO Network, followed by Côte d'Ivoire.
Thank you very much, Chair, for giving this opportunity. First of all, we would like to appreciate and a special thanks to Switzerland for the supporting to this very highly need countries, LDCs, because this Sscf is really very important for them. We appreciate, and also we wish that they will increase their support more. And in the same time, we are requesting all the donor countries at least put their fingers with their contributing hands so that this fund can work well. And similarly, in this connection, we also want to request that to consider how the CSO networks and the other CSOs, indigenous peoples, can work there. So we want to hear from Chizuru, if you can kindly clarify more on this, what role and how you want us to help you. We are ready to help. Thank you.
Thanks to you, Sano. Now I pass it over to Côte d'Ivoire, followed by Canada. Alimata, please, the floor is yours.
Merci, Président. Je voudrais féliciter le secrétariat du FEM pour le travail formidable fait dans le cadre de cette importante stratégie pour l'adaptation des fonds spéciaux que sont les fonds LDC et Sscf. Nous sommes ravis en tant que circonscription comportant des pays à revenus intermédiaires et des pays les moins avancés de revoir des propositions de financement pour les deux fonds spéciaux. Cependant, nous remercions les bailleurs de fonds pour les efforts constants faits à l'égard des pays les moins avancés. Nous apprécions les efforts de financement offerts par les bailleurs de fonds volontaires, par le Fonds vert climat et par le Fonds d'adaptation. Concernant la théorie des changements, je voudrais savoir s'il y aura des séances de renforcement des capacités des pays PMA bénéficiaires afin d'optimiser les résultats. Concernant le Sscf, nous encourageons les bailleurs de fonds pour leur support afin de rendre possible la réalisation des projets d'innovation et de transfert des technologies possibles dans les pays à revenus intermédiaires comme ceux de notre circonscription. Nous constatons la répartition des ressources entre les deux fonds. Bien que plus vulnérables, les PMA, nous pensons qu'il faut revoir légèrement à la hausse les parts allouées aux pays Sscf. Et dans l'ensemble, nous approuvons cette stratégie programmée pour l'adaptation au changement climatique pour la période du FEM 8. Je vous remercie.
Thanks to you, Alimata. Now move over to Canada, followed by Angola. Tom, you got the floor.
I just walked out.
Okay, yes, sorry for that. So we'll invite Tom when he comes back. Julio, you got the floor. You'll be followed by France.
Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, Koche. I speak on behalf of Southern Africa constituency to first welcome the work program, the presentation, and to say that the countries in Southern Africa, they are very happy with the increase in the amount for the LDCF funds for GEF 8. This is a very good news for our constituency. The money that we have been receiving from the Ldcfs, it has been help the countries of our region a lot, especially in adaptation, reinforcing government capacity, climate resilience in the communities, management of conservation areas. The results, they are very positive. And here I would like to thank Swaziland for the statement when she said that Swaziland will continue to support the program. Please do that. Countries in Africa and in the region, they are very pleased to hear this support from Swaziland. And we're also happy because this money, we can see changes when we see capacity building, reinforcing the governmental capacity to fast adapt with GEF policies, GEF procedures, and help the civil society, NGOs, also to be part of the project implementations. And for the GEF 8, we are looking at more involvement of the CSOs in the government projects, because they are the ones who play the role in our countries as the eyes and the ears of the government. They are very well connected with the communities, and especially for when we speak about adaptation, there is a civil society playing a very important role together with the government. So we thank you and we welcome this program. Thank you, Carlos, and thank you all your team and all the donor countries. And we motivate you to still supporting GEF and our countries for the adaptation programs. Thank you.
Obrigado, Julio. Now we have France, followed by Sweden. Clement, you got the floor, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Coprésident. Je vais être brève. Nous remercions le secrétariat pour l'organisation des réunions qui ont permis d'aboutir à cette stratégie que nous accueillons positivement. En tant que contributeur historique au Ldcf, la France se réjouit en particulier de la mise en place d'un suivi et d'un reporting avec les marqueurs de Rio, des co-bénéfices pour les 3 conventions de Rio, comme cela sera également fait pour les projets du FEM, et également du suivi et du reporting de la part des agences de mise en œuvre en considérant les cibles et plafonds aspirationnels définis dans le contexte de la reconstitution FEM 8. Je vous remercie.
Thanks, Clement. So I'll pass it over to Denmark, followed by India. Emil, please, you got the floor.
Thank you very much. And also thanks to the Secretariat and to Ambassador Fituri for your very insightful words. Denmark also very much welcomes the strategy, and we congratulate the Secretariat for all your efforts in putting together this comprehensive strategy for both the Ldcf and Sccf. It's very much appreciated. With regards to the Ldcf, we support the multi-year pledging option, and we also support the ambitious funding outlook under both financing scenarios, especially in terms of doubling the allocations for each LDCs compared to the GEF 7 period, as this is fully aligned to the Glasgow Climate Pact of doubling climate finance by 2025. We also very much appreciate the focus and the scope of the strategy, including the priority themes and areas, as well as a continued emphasis on gender responsiveness, youth empowerment, and private sector engagement. And finally, I just have one question regarding the operational improvements. You mentioned that in the next period you will further enhance the synergies with the GEF Trust Fund, and I just wanted to ask if that also includes the IPs. Thank you.
Pleasure, Emily. Emil. Since Tom has joined us, I know that he was talking with the capital. Probably he had good news in terms of more pledging to Ldcf. But well, let's see what Tom has for us. Canada will be followed by Denmark and then India. Sorry, because I missed in the list. Tom, the floor is yours.
So when the deputy minister's office call you, you run. So it was truly about COP15 and also about pledging and so on and so forth. Just a few remarks. Basically, it's thank you. And I thank very much to my Samoan brother for underscoring that this is about people. This is about empathy and not sympathy. The same thing for our Solomon Islands, Colin. And I jokingly call them the Lost Boys because Carlos Manuel called them large oceanic states. And the acronym is LOSS. So they're not lost, and we don't want them to be lost. And as a consequence, this is a very important issue that we have today. With that regard, I will tell you that when I read the Ldcf, Sscf, I followed the process and everything else. Just like the GEF 8 process, this was done so well. So thank you very much to Carlos Manuel, Gustavo, and Chiz for that. The vision, the strategy, the pillars, innovation, private sector, as well as the focus on easing access to climate finance, scaling it up. We absolutely support that. And to tell you how good the process and the substance was, even before the conclusion of the process and the documents, it was so easy for us to put $37.5 million into approvals so that we could announce it at COP26. And it made Emily Simmons' life so easy so that she can cut and paste and then give it to the minister to approve. And you already have our money in February 2022 so that projects could be funded because of the urgent needs. Naturally, we favor multi-year, but we were like, the needs are now. If others do multi-year, great. We could do multi-year too, but we had the flex and we gave it all. So thank you for that. On the Sccf, I know Gabriela wants company, and the documentation that has been provided, the clarity, the focus on innovation, technology, and so on and so forth, that will help us go home tomorrow and then continue the good process of providing advice to people so that they could feel empathy for the people of small island developing states. I'm sorry, Carlos Manuel. I don't want to call them the Lost Boys or Lost Girls. And with that, thank you again for all of this. And just one tiny footnote, because I know Gustavo quite often doesn't get thanked that much. On the margins of the spring meetings of the World Bank and IMF, he was able to sit down and do my job for me, which is talking to my minister, as well as Caribbean ministers about the good work of the GEF, the Ldcf, the Sccf, but I think he was doing a pitch to my minister so that Gabriella is no longer alone in Sccf, and hopefully I can join her, and I encourage others to at least pitch. Thank you.
Thanks to you, Tom. Thanks very much. So I have Sweden and India. Karin, you got the floor.
Thank you. I thought you were forgetting about me. No, just kidding. Thank you for the programming strategy. We support it fully, and as others have also mentioned, we really are happy with the process that we have gone through to come up with the programming strategy. Really good process. Among other things that we like, I just want to mention a few. We are happy with the increased focus on private sector engagement and focus on gender, policy coherence, the continued work on complementarity and cooperation with the other funds, GCF, and that is also clear when looking at the work program that we are going to discuss later today. We are happy with the window for facilitation of access for LDCs and SIDS. I think it's really useful. And also the enhanced tracking of Rio markers, just to mention a few things that we like about this strategy. Finally, I also just want to encourage more countries to move towards multi-year funding. Sweden is currently preparing for a new 4-year agreement. We're not able to pledge at this early, but we're working on that. Thank you.
Thanks to you, Karin. Now let me go over to India, followed by Niger. Rases, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Especially, I'm from Nepal, but India and Nepal, we belong to the same constituency, South Asia constituency. Thank you for this opportunity, and also would like to thank for the excellent presentation on the pressing needs of Ldcf and Sccf. We welcome the GEF for securing funds especially for the Ldcf, and also appreciate Switzerland for its commitment. And I hope that there will be some more donors competing with Switzerland so that more funds will be secured for our cause. Because this time is not a regular kind of time, because we not only have to focus on adaptation and mitigation, but also to focus on post-COVID recovery, which is why the funding requirement is more pressing than ever. I hope that this will be well understood and well taken by the GEF donors. As well as I also welcome the key priorities that have been identified while making the presentation. And also we encourage that we also focus on resiliency and inclusiveness in the priority areas, which is very important, very critical on the LDCs or even for the SIDS countries, because they are always vulnerable, and also sometimes the gains of adaptation and mitigation are backtracked also because of the different situations and climate vulnerabilities. So let's also focus on, let's also try to include resiliency, maintaining resiliency, and also inclusiveness on the priority areas. Thank you very much.
Thanks to you, Nepal. Now I'll pass it over to Niger. Dan, please, s'il vous plaît.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Et évidemment, en tant que représentant de la circonscription Sahel, groupe des pays bénéficiaires, je voudrais féliciter le secrétariat du FEM et tous les autres acteurs, en tout cas pour cette stratégie que nous soutenons beaucoup, mais surtout rassurer nos partenaires pour qu'ils puissent beaucoup plus s'engager et respecter surtout leur engagement. Les axes qui ont été définis et les programmes prioritaires sont très importants pour nos pays. Et pour preuve, le système alimentaire durable et résilient font interagir des groupes divers. Il y a les petits exploitants agricoles, les acteurs du secteur privé, les pouvoirs publics, les institutions de recherche, la société civile. Et si tous collaborent, et je pense qu'on peut faire progresser la gestion environnementale au service de la sécurité alimentaire, qui est une priorité pour nos pays. Investir beaucoup plus dans la restauration des terres et les écosystèmes va aider les petits producteurs à adopter des pratiques qui garantissent la bonne santé, la productivité des terres, la résilience au changement climatique et une vie plus décente. Faire face à la migration à grande échelle rurale et urbaine, non planifiée et indésirable. Monsieur le Président, ce ne sont pas les solutions qui manquent pour préserver et restaurer les terres et renforcer la résilience. Vous avez cité dans votre introduction la Grande Muraille Verte, et c'est effectivement un chantier qui constitue de bons exemples de partenariat et de financement ambitieux pour des transformations solides au niveau de nos communautés et de nos écosystèmes. Nous savons aussi que les problèmes sécuritaires qui vivent nos pays ont de fortes corrélations avec la problématique des changements climatiques. Voilà pourquoi nous appelons en tout cas toutes les parties à soutenir cette stratégie. Nous appelons les agences à accompagner nos gouvernements, en tout cas pour que dans la mise en œuvre, nous puissions en tout cas montrer au monde qu'on peut sauver la planète et régler tous nos problèmes de développement. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup, Dan. With this, we have covered the list of all the speakers. So I will pass it over to Chis for her reactions and comments to questions and interventions from council members. Chis, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the council members as well as the civil society for your active endorsement as well as support of the strategy as well as the process that we have gone through together. Very encouraged to hear that the strategy is actually meeting the priorities as well as the needs that those around the table actually see as something we need to be prioritizing. I think in terms of specific questions, there were a couple of questions from Germany. So let me try to address those. Germany, Sylvia, your question was, how will we ensure parity between funding windows A and B? And what we will do if to go to COP27 with less than certain financial outlook, right? On the question of the parity, because both the Sscf and Ldcf are working on the contribution model, all we can do is actually make sure that we have strong outreach to donor countries and to make sure that the different donor countries having slightly different priorities, if you will, of perhaps some more interested in supporting technology transfer innovation, be made aware of the opportunity to earmark that support under Window B, as opposed to those who are more interested in supporting the SIDS, having the opportunity to earmark the support under Window A. And we do think it's actually important for us to have parity, strive towards parity under Window A and Window B, because the Sccf at the end of the day has been established by the convention to serve all countries. So we want to make sure that we're still honoring the fundamental principle that there is an opportunity for the funds to address the needs of all countries. Window A will provide an earmarking opportunity for SIS, which I think is quite innovative, and I see that there's quite a bit of support. Other countries do need support for innovation, private sector, and technology transfer, and one might argue that the opportunities to have bigger impact on those might also be present in non-LDCs, non-CIS contexts, as well as regional and cross-cutting programs that we could be doing across multiple countries. So that's just something that we want to make sure that we can have a good outreach as well as awareness raising among donors. What will we do if we go to COP27 without less than adequate resources? My sincere hope is that we will not come to that juncture. It's very encouraging to hear strong support as well as interest being expressed by those around the table. We're also having additional conversations with additional donors who haven't spoken today. So our hope is that by COP27, we can actually go to the COP with a collective contribution, if you will, from the donors, and also to have some positive message on the adaptation as well as financing, knowing that adaptation, finance are two of the two priorities to be addressed in COP27 by the Egyptian presidency. I mean, we've heard this very clear from the Egyptian side that those are two elements that they really want to focus on. So our hope is that we will be able to go there and be supportive of the achievements of the COP, as well as the support provided to the countries.
We're talking about the trust fund and the trust fund piece.
Oh, yes. There was a question of how we are going to be working with the GEF Trust Fund as well as IPs. Yes, we will be looking into opportunities to work with the GEF Trust Fund programming. For IPs, I think there are opportunities for countries to consider doing parallel financing to the IPs. We're not going to be mixing resources from the Ldcf or Sccf into the IP fold because that's already decided upon. But depending on the country priorities and as well as opportunities, we will be more than happy to really encourage and facilitate specific countries or set of countries such as CIS to do programming that would be parallel and well aligned and coordinated with specific IPs moving forward. There was a question from the CSO network. We'll be discussing after the session's over and how we can work together. Because the strategy has the whole of society approach where we really want to make sure that the CSOs as well as indigenous peoples and local communities will have a very strong engagement from the conceptualization as well as the actual implementation of projects. We really would like to consult with you and get your feedback on how that could be successfully rolled out. Another opportunity that we really want to explore further is under the dedicated program. We will be having consultations with countries, as indicated, to really help them pull together good programming proposals, as well as have more inclusive consultation process. And again, those are the areas we really would like to see how we can work together with you. I think those are the specific comments that we received. If I fail to answer anything, happy to come in. And once again, I really would like to appreciate all the support as well as warm welcome and endorsements of the strategy and the improvements. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cheese. And having exhausted the list of speakers, I would like to invite Council to adopt the draft decision that is included in the document GEF/Ldcf Sccf 32/04/Rev1. Good, thank you. Decision approved. With this, we finish agenda item number 4, then we'll continue with agenda item number 5, and it's a pleasure to me to pass it over to my co-chair, Ambassador Fituri. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Carlos. Agenda item 5, the work program for the Least Developed Countries Fund, and I give the floor to Gustavo to present the document GEF/Ldcf.Sccf.32/03 work program for the Least Developed Countries Fund. Over to you, Gustavo.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Faturi, and good morning to everyone. Apologies for being slightly underdressed this morning, so thank you. I ask for your indulgence here. It's a pleasure to introduce the work program for the Ldcf and Ldcf for consideration for Council. This is the 8th and final work program for GEF 7. The work program includes 8 projects, requesting a total of $72.44 million of project financing and agency fees. Specifically, the work program includes 4 national projects in Comoros, Madagascar, Niger, Tuvalu, and includes 3 regional projects and 1 global project. 2 of the regional projects focus on Africa, and the 3rd on Pacific SIDS. Upon approval of the work program, the number of LDCs benefiting from Ldcf support in the GEF 7 period will reach 47, or 100% of the LDCs. Of these, 38 seeds have successfully accessed up to the $10 million initial cap, and another 8 LDCs have accessed $9 million. The utilization rate for LDCS resources for national project has been, in GEF 7, 99.2%. Sectors and systems address nature-based solutions for adaptation, climate-smart agriculture and food security, climate risk insurance, coastal zone management, water, climate information services, disaster risk management, and others. 1 global project seeks to leverage either resources from the World Bank to deliver nature-based solutions in LDCs. And 1 regional project seeks to harness multilateral and bilateral support for sustainable blue finance in the Pacific SIDS. Many projects include community-based interventions coupled with policy and government support, innovative approaches with technologies, techniques, and community finance are also included. The cohort of projects presented here has also identified the various potential opportunities to mitigate impacts created by the pandemic and to deliver climate benefits towards green and blue recovery. With the approval of this work program, as I mentioned earlier, the Ldcf will have served all 47 LDCs, which is a great result. I would like at this point to provide you with some highlights on the GEF 7 period that's ending this week. The GEF and the GCF will continue to collaborate through the long-term vision on complementarity, coherence, and collaboration. And I would like to point to one particular example of the GEF-GCF coordination at the project level, which is included in this work program, which is actions towards the Great Green Wall Initiative, which has been developed as a major initiative under the GEF and the GCF with the support of the process that was made available to us through the LTV, or the long-term vision. The GCF is also co-financing the project. GCF and GEF engagement is at both the strategic joint planning level to support climate adaptation in Great Green Wall countries, but also at the operational level through project coordination committees, knowledge platforms, and joint funding of the proposed Adaptation Innovation Grant to be created under the project. The Comoros and Tuvalu projects in this work program are also coordinating very closely with GCF support in the country. Regarding resource availability and predictability, the work program, while supporting all technically cleared projects, is the smallest among the 7 work programs of the GEF 7 period, and thus far in terms of the number of project resources that have been requested. There are 2 reasons for this. The first is that our outreach prioritized LDCs that had not yet accessed Ldcf support in the GEF 7 period, and also the LDCs that still had resources remaining under the initial $10 million cap. The second factor is relatively minor. It doesn't affect much resource availability in the trust fund. And this work program is utilizing a major share of resources available in the time of the work program constitution. It's worth noting that most of the pledged contributions since December of 2020 are expected to be received from September of 2021 and beyond. We also recently had a very successful Ldcf pledging meeting in Glasgow, right? Regarding programming, this work program is supporting technically cleared projects, all technically cleared projects, and throughout the GEF 7 process, the Secretariat prioritized support for national projects to ensure all DCs had access. And I just pointed out again to the successful pledging session in Glasgow in November 2021. Now we go to the actual work program here. This map shows all the countries that are included in the current work program. And as I mentioned, they cover projects, national projects in Comoros, Madagascar, Niger, and Tuvalu. And also 2 regional projects are included in Africa, and 1 for the Pacific seeds that also benefit all LDCs. This map shows all countries programmed in GEF 7, including in this work program, with the work program number being shown here in brackets. Slide here now shows the full picture to date, including the total Ldcf resources requested in each one of the work programs and how we have responded to that demand. And the current work program is shown at the far right, as you can see in brown color. Here we have a closer look at the 4 national projects in the current work program, which for the 4 countries that I mentioned. The Ldcf grant requests, including fees for Comoros, is 9.8 million, Madagascar 7.8 million, Niger 9.8 million, and Tuvalu 4.8 million. The agencies for these national projects are UNEP and UNDP. While co-financing is not required for Ldcf, these projects are expected to mobilize approximately $45 million, meaning that every Ldcf dollar will be matched by 2.5 to $1 in leverage financing provided by other sources. The slide here shows the global and 3 regional projects, including fees, for a request of $10.9 million. For the regional projects, the request includes fees for the 2 Africa projects, which amounts to 9.8 million for each one. For the regional project focused on Pacific SIDS, Pacific LDCs and SIDS, the Ldcf request also includes fees, and it's also $9.8 million. The agencies for these projects are the World Bank, the African Development Bank, IFAD, and the Asia Development Bank. All 8 projects in this work program respond to the ambition and the requirements of the GEF policy on gender equality. All 8 projects in the work program considered gender issues in the initial project design. They all included plans to address gender gaps through promoting women's participation in decision-making processes and focusing on actions that will bring social, economic benefits and services for women. 3 of the projects specify that they would like to contribute to addressing gaps in the access to and control over natural resources. The 8 projects are expected to include sex disaggregated and gender-sensitive indicators in their results framework. And in line with the GEF policy on gender equality, the 8 projects will need to carry out a gender analysis during the preparation phase, develop gender action plans, and provide additional details on proposed sex disaggregated indicators prior to the CEO endorsement stage. The 8 projects also in this work program will generate results across the adaptation core indicator as follows. 1.308 million direct beneficiaries, of which close to 670,000 are over or 51% are female. At least 101 policy plans and development frameworks will mainstream climate resilience. Approximately 234,000 hectares of land will be brought under climate resilient management. And finally, 41,000 people will have enhanced capacity to identify climate risks and engage in adaptation measures, of which 21,000 people, or nearly 52%, are female. With this, I thank you, Ambassador Fiture, and over to you.
Thank you, Gustavo, for presenting the work program for the Ldcf. I open the floor for questions and comments from members of the council. I see Canada. Tom, you have the floor.
It's always good when I read the Canadian experts' comment, all positive. So I just want to share it with you. So my colleagues and I, as donors, we're very happy. All LDCs are benefiting. Gender integration is all there. We also see innovation and partnerships quite evident. And overall, this is one of the, let us say, it's a good bookend to the Ldcf program, the last one, for the GEF 7 period. So when donors are happy, that means that, you know, you've done a great job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom, for that vote of confidence. I give the floor to Sylvia of Germany, to be followed by Karin of Sweden. Sylvia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Germany welcomes the work program and would like to thank all staff for its efforts despite the difficult circumstances due to COVID-19. Building resilience and diversifying livelihoods in vulnerable communities has been crucial before and becomes even more important in times of crisis. We see the Ldcf as a key actor to support blue, green, and resilient recovery efforts in LDCs and remain fully committed to its work. With regards to the work program, we welcome the focus of projects in Africa and SIDS. We also highly welcome that three of the 4 countries which will reach the funding caps of GEF 7, with Madagascar just falling short of the cap by $300,000. We further appreciate that all LDCs have now been able to access the Ldcf, and especially thank the Secretariat for their intensive outreach to achieve this target. As always, we have a set of comments and requests that we will provide in writing after the council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. I give the floor to Karin of Sweden, to be followed by Clemens of France.
Thank you. I'm basically echoing what Canada and Germany has already said. We welcome the work program. We are happy that all LDCs have accessed resources in the GEF 7 period. It's also positive to see that the number of GEF agencies active in climate adaptation has increased over time, contributing to more balanced GEF 7 programming. Probably still room for improvement, but it's really going in the right direction. We are happy to see the examples of close collaboration with GCF. That's very positive. And also gender seems to be well captured in initial project design, so that's really great to see. So thank you.
Thank you. I give the floor to Clemens of France, to be followed by Collins of Solomon Islands.
Merci, Monsieur le Coprésident. La France remercie le secrétariat et les agences pour le travail fourni et approuve ce work programme faisant suite aux contributions annoncées lors de la COP26. La France apprécie son focus sur l'adaptation dans les PMA, prenant en compte les enjeux de résilience verte et bleue pour les populations et les écosystèmes dans le contexte post-pandémie. La France apprécie en particulier les projets suivants. Les projets de solutions fondées sur la nature et d'adaptation fondées sur les écosystèmes. Le soutien à la Grande Muraille verte et les pays du Sahel. La facilité assurantielle visant à dérisquer l'adaptation en Afrique, qui constitue un outil majeur pour les années à venir. En outre, la France apprécie les exemples de projets illustrant la coordination entre le Fonds vert et le FEM. À ce propos, quels sont, selon le secrétariat, les principes de cette coordination qui ressortent de ces exemples? Nous serions intéressés d'avoir davantage d'informations. Et enfin, et cela a déjà été mentionné, observant la photographie du Ldcf sur l'ensemble de la période FEM7, il est très satisfaisant de constater que tous les pays éligibles ont pu bénéficier quasiment en intégralité du soutien disponible. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Franz. I give the floor to Colin of Solomon Islands to be followed by Emily of Denmark.
Thank you very much. Speaking on behalf of the constituency as well that I represent, to express our deep appreciation for not only the presentation of the program, but I think the rich breadth and depth of it in terms of reaching out to many of the population outside. We certainly, from my constituency, a number of our countries have benefited from it. So we would like to register appreciation, and certainly when our partners are happy, we're also happy. I think we can keep building on that happiness as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. I give the floor to Emily of Denmark to be followed by Alf of Norway. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think I'm also just going to echo what many of the colleagues have already said around the table. Denmark also expresses its appreciation to the GEF Secretariat for achieving its goal of leaving no LDC behind in the GEF 7 period by providing equal resources, LDCF resources, to all LDCs by the end of this funding cycle. And while we also fully support prioritizing country support to ensure that all LDCs have access funds during the GEF 7 period, we do appreciate the inclusion of regional and global FSPs in this work program. In particularly, we're very pleased to see the efforts to enhance GEF and GCF complementarity through the regional Great Green Wall initiative, and we very much appreciate the collective efforts of the GEF and GCF Secretariat to operationalize the LTV. And in this regard, we would also like to request that this particular project ensures close coordination with the existing Ldcf and GEF Trust Fund projects that have been approved in the GEF 7 cycle in the countries that are targeted by this particular project. And Denmark also plans on sending its comments to the Secretariat by the deadline. Thank you.
Thank you, Denmark. I give the floor to Netherlands to be followed by Sheila of the United States of America, who will be joining us virtually. Netherlands, you have the floor.
Thank you, Co-Chair. In our seat, shared by the Netherlands and Finland, we welcome this work program. And there are just 2 points that we consider especially positive and that I wish to single out here. The first one is that all 8 projects in this work program have considered gender issues in their initial project design. All included plans to address gender gaps through promoting women's participation in decision-making and focusing on actions that will bring socioeconomic benefits and services for women. The second point is that we are very positive about the fact that the projects in the Sahel, the Comoros, and Tuvalu involve a close collaboration between the GEF, or should I say the Ldcf, and the GCF. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Netherlands. So I give the floor to Sheila of United States of America, who will be joining us online. Over to you.
Has already been stated by others. We see it's important to reach the remaining LDCs that had not been able to reach their caps under this current GEF period. So great to see those projects going forward. The 4 regional and global projects, I think, are really great examples of how resources housed at the Ldcf can spur innovation and catalyze other types of investment. In particular, the support for the Africa Risk Capacity Program, which the U.S. is also supporting, I think will have a huge impact in African states when it comes to weathering climate disasters. And we are also very pleased to see increased support for nature-based solutions on more of a regional and global level. So that I think will have a great impact in terms of making nature-based solutions more standardized in terms of the World Bank's assistance portfolio. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheila. Give the floor to the representative of the CSO network.
Lo que queremos desde la red es agradecer no solo la presentación del programa a la Secretaría, sino también las metas cumplidas y hacernos eco nuevamente de todo lo que los miembros y los países donantes han dicho sobre el cumplimiento, esencialmente la incorporación de género, que ha sido un avance muy importante en este programa, y bueno, si los donantes están felices, si los socios están felices, si la Secretaría está bien, nosotros apoyamos totalmente este proceso. Gracias.
Thank you, CSO. I'm looking around. I don't see any more requests for the floor. So I'll ask Gustavo to respond to some of the questions that were raised, if any, and also some of the very positive comments from members. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador, and thanks very much. We very much appreciate the support that we heard here this morning on the work program and the overall performance of Ldcf and GEF 7. And I like the reference to happiness, and Tom, you know, happy donors make for happy staff and happy CEO, and also happy agencies and happy countries. So it's a long chain of you know, mutually enforcing happiness linkages. So thanks a lot. So I think in terms of questions, let me see here. I think France asked us to elaborate a little bit more, particularly on the GEF-GCF collaboration. And first, I'll point you to the LTV report that we provided here. So you're going to find more details on that report that and we can discuss on the sidelines if you need more comments. But the point that I would like to raise is that the collaboration is not only at the upstream process, the planning process, and the, let's say, the approval process, but also plan for downstream and implementation coordination across the activities funded by the two funds, including the respective agencies that are implementing GCF projects and GEF projects. And this involves, for example, the collaboration on the elaboration and dissemination of information platforms on technical assistance. So we are amplifying the reach that the wealth of agencies that make part of this process across the two funds can do, and these one knowledge platforms that are becoming very attractive when we have these opportunities to do that, create a lot of additional externalities, positive externalities that help the project achieve objectives. Let me see here. And again, we can add additional points. Did I miss anything?
That's it.
Yep. If I did, please ask me again. But I think we covered most of the remarks. And thanks for also highlighting specific projects and what it's bringing to the work program. Thank you.
Thank you, Gustavo, for that. I just want to say that if there is anything that we Pacific Islands have in plentiful supply and in abundance, it's happiness, happiness, happiness. So, having said that, can I now invite the Council to adopt the draft decision that is included in document GEF/Ldcf/Sccf.32/03. I see no objection, so the decision is adopted.
Thank you very much. So we finished a little bit early. It's 12:09. So we're going to be advancing into the agenda, and we will be moving then the agenda item 6, the FY21 AMR will be starting right away, and then we will break for lunch and come back after 2 p.m. So the floor is yours, Chiz or Gustavo.
Okay, thanks, Ambassador. Let me go over to agenda item number 6, fiscal year 21 annual monitoring review of the Ldcf, Sscf funds. I would like to invite my colleagues, my colleague Chiz Aoki, to present the document GEF/Ldcf, Sscf 32/05. Chiz, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On behalf of the team, I would like to introduce document fiscal year 21 annual monitoring review of the Ldcf and the Sccf. Okay. The review describes the performance and results of and the lessons learned from the portfolio of projects and programs financed under the Ldcf and Sccf that have begun implementation on or before June 30th of 2021 and that were under implementation during at least part of the fiscal year 2021. Can I have the... Thank you. So let me start by presenting key messages from the report. This is the snapshot of what we're presenting in the report. The first point is that active Sccf and Ldcf portfolios are making satisfactory progress in terms of the development objectives as well as implementation progress ratings. The second point is that Sccf portfolio in particular has demonstrated very high levels of achievement as evidenced by high performance ratings. The third point is in terms of risk, we have only found little change on the fiscal year 21 risk ratings compared to fiscal year 20, despite the COVID pandemic that has been taking place between these fiscal years. In terms of results, Sccf portfolio has far exceeded targets. Ldcf portfolio has done very well as well, considering that these are targeted for the LDCs, which are in general more vulnerable and fragile, as well as some capacity, as well as institutional constraints. Now, a couple of slides on the performance of the Ldcf. The GEF Secretariat in this AMR received and reviewed reports for 74 Ldcf projects. Total Ldcf project financing amounted to $464 million for these 74 projects. Of the project financing committed, $257 million, or about 55%, had been disbursed. In terms of sectoral coverage, agriculture, natural resource management, and climate information services were the top 3 sectors covered under the Ldcf projects. And these were together contributing to approximately 70% or more than $310 million of the total project financing committed. And the slide also shows the geographical distribution of the portfolio. Because of the distribution of LDCs, 77% of the projects that were reviewed during this AMR exercise were in Africa, followed by 20% in Asia and Pacific, and 2% in Latin America and the Caribbean, which basically means Haiti. Here is the annualized performance in terms of development outcomes as well as implementation progress. These are the 2 performance indicators that we're tracking across all our projects. 82% of the Ldcf projects in the active portfolio were rated moderately satisfactory or higher in terms of their progress towards development outcomes. And 81% were rated moderately satisfactory or higher in their implementation progress. And in terms of the changes across the fiscal year 19 to fiscal year 21, we see that they are more or less not uniform, but they're not showing significant changes or disparities or worsening or improvements. This slide summarizes achieved results. As of June 30th, 2021, cumulative results of the Ldcf portfolio already included more than 17 million direct beneficiaries and over 620,000 people trained in various aspects of climate change adaptation. Through the Ldcf finance projects, an estimated 3.5 million hectares of land had been brought under more resilient, climate-resilient management. Moreover, we're seeing 225 regional, national, and sector-wide policies, plans, and frameworks in LDCs that have been strengthened or developed to better address climate change risks and adaptation based on the priorities that the countries themselves have identified. Now, let's look at the Sccf portfolio. Under the Sccf, the GEF Secretariat received reports for 31 projects. The total Sccf project financing for these 31 projects amounted to $135 million. Of the project grants committed, $88 million, or about 65%, have been disbursed. In terms of the sector coverage, water resource management, agriculture, and infrastructure were the top 3 sectors covered under the active portfolio. And together, the portfolio was contributing approximately 75% or $99 million of the total project financing committed under the top sectors. In terms of the regional coverage, 30% of the projects were in Africa, 29% in Latin America and the Caribbean, 21% in Europe and Central Asia, 19% in Asia and Pacific. Moving on to the performance, 97% of the Sccf projects in the active portfolio were rated moderately satisfactory or higher in terms of their progress towards development outcomes, which is very high. 94% were rated moderately satisfactory or higher in their implementation progress, which is also very high. So in terms of the performance ratings we're putting in front of you, it does go to show the Sccf projects are doing very, very well. And this slide summarizes the achieved results from the Sscf active portfolio in fiscal year 21. As of June 30th, 2021, cumulative results of the Sscf portfolio already included more than 6.5 million direct beneficiaries and over 100,000 people trained in various aspects of climate change adaptation. Through the Sscf finance projects, an estimated 6.4 million hectares of land had been brought under more resilient management. Also, 132 regional, national, sector-wide policies, plans, and frameworks have been strengthened or developed to better address climate change risks and adaptation. Oops. Here we go. So now I'd like to present a couple of slides that are looking into the Ldcf and Sccf terminal evaluation, risks analysis, as well as some lessons learned. So this slide summarizes the results at the terminal evaluation stage. In fiscal year 21, 4 terminal evaluations from the Ldcf and 4 terminal evaluations from the Sccf were submitted, along with trackable achievements and climate adaptation indicators. We are presenting graphs here, but please keep in mind that we're talking about a fairly small cohort of projects to draw generalized lessons as well as present statistical information here. Nevertheless, overall data indicates that good progress is recorded at the terminal evaluation stage. For the Ldcf, the achieved results from the cohort of projects exceeded the targets set at the approved endorsement stage for 3 out of the 4 indicators. Specifically, the number of people trained was over 200% of the targeted numbers. For the Sccf, the data shows the cohort of Sccf project achieved higher results in all 4 core indicators at completion compared to the expected results at the CEO approval as well as endorsement stage. So once again, this shows that the Sccf portfolio, including those that have been completed within the past fiscal year, have demonstrated high degree of delivery as well as impact. Now, this slide is presenting the risk analysis, and we presented something similar last year too. So as the COVID-19 pandemic unfolds, risk monitoring becomes more relevant and important to help inform portfolio management. Risk ratings assess the overall risk of factors, internal as well as external, to the projects that may affect implementation or prospect for achieving project objectives. Risks of projects are rated on the following scale in the PIRs: high risk, substantial risk, modest risk, and the low risk. The risk levels reported by the Ldcf and Sccf projects combined were reported as low or moderate for 78% of the projects. Overall, Sccf projects reported less risk compared to the Ldcf projects. While 74% of the Ldcf projects reported low or modest risks, approximately 94% of Sccf projects said their risks were low or modest in the fiscal year 21 cohort. As LDC is specifically for LDCs and Sccf is for all developing countries, this difference in risk ratings could highlight more challenges faced amongst the LDCs. And now this is my final slide. Some of the lessons learned from the field that we have highlighted in the report is summarized in this, are summarized in this slide. Some of the success factors, challenges, and lessons learned from the projects under implementation include, among others, extensive stakeholder participation, providing support and mentoring by senior officials representing various levels from national, regional, local levels, are helping to really towards the successful implementation and impact of the projects. Engaging local level stakeholders as project steering committee members could provide insight and direction on the project implementation. We have seen some interesting examples of that. The second lessons learned is participation and empowerment of the vulnerable groups that encourage them to express freely before village assemblies or even from participating in decision making that could actually contribute to the success of the projects, because ultimately these are the people that projects are addressing as beneficiaries and stakeholders. Third element, effective stakeholder engagement in the identification of problems to be solved results in a more assertive design and to realistically solve the main problems that the projects are trying to address. Fourth, timely decisions taken by the project coordinators are actually critical and crucial in implementing adaptive management and accomplishing a better use of the limited resources that the funds can provide. So with that, thank you, Mr. Chair, and we'd be happy to answer any questions or comments you might have.
Thanks to you, Cheese, for presenting the annual monitoring review. I would like, with this, I would like to open the floor to council members to see if they got any clarification questions, any comments. Okay, I got Switzerland and France. Gabriela, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Carlos, and thank you, Chase, again for the good presentation. I'll be brief. We welcome the results and the report. Thank you so much. Very pleased about them and would like to highlight the very good performance of both funds, but especially also the Sscf. So those of you who need a pitch, look at the results. They're brilliant. So yes, very much appreciate the work of everyone involved in this and the good results achieved. Chief, thank you so much.
Gracias, Gabriela. Clémence, over to you.
Merci, Monsieur le Coprésident. Nous remercions le secrétariat pour ce document et sa présentation. Nous souhaitons noter une nouvelle fois la forte concentration des agences dans le portefeuille du Ldcf sur cette période de reporting. Nous notons également que les agences ayant la part la plus importante présentent des notations les plus basses en termes d'atteinte des objectifs de développement et de mise en œuvre des projets. Nous serions intéressés par davantage d'éléments d'information pour expliquer ces notations. En particulier, nous notons que le PNUD est largement en dessous des notations des autres agences, avec 67% pour les objectifs de développement et 58% pour la mise en œuvre, alors qu'il représente 38% des projets sur la période. Le secrétariat pourrait-il fournir des éléments d'information à ce sujet? Je vous remercie.
We'll do that. Pleasure. I got Corentin, Belgium, please.
Thank you for giving me the floor, and many thanks for this interesting report and presentation. Just a short remark. We particularly welcome the emerging good results and innovative measures mentioned in the chapter on gender mainstreaming. The examples provided present indeed encouraging perspectives, and because gender issues are also important for us, we would like to know if it's possible for the Secretariat to provide systematically in the AMR sex disaggregated data concerning the beneficiaries and particularly for the number of people who benefit from a training. And this, of course, for both the Ldcf and the Sccf. If it's possible, it would be much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Corentin. I got Sylvia, Germany. Please, Sylvia.
I hope I can be incredibly quick. I support everything that Gabriela said. I also support the point made by Clémence on UNDP's performance. It would be nice to get a bit more info here as to why that is the case. And of course, a big echo to Corentin on the gender issues. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sylvia. I don't have any. Oh, okay. Yes, Emil, thanks. Please.
Thank you, and I'm also going to echo what Switzerland and Germany was saying, that we very much welcome the report and also the good results that are shown for both funds. But I just have one question regarding the results of the terminal evaluation for the Ldcf. Most of the actual numbers were higher than the expected targets, except for the one related to land under resilient management. And I just wanted to ask, what were the reasons for that? Was it that the areas were just overestimated, or if you have other insight on that? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Denmark. With this, I'll pass it over to Chis, so she can be able to do the proper clarifications to questions and comments. Chis.
Thank you so much. Not in the order of questions received. Let me first address the question and comments from Belgium. We can provide sex aggregated data. We are actually reporting sex aggregated data in the progress report, with the caveat that the tracking of sex aggregated data only started in I believe in GEF 6 across the GEF portfolio. So there is a little bit of a lag, if you will, on our ability to really do justice to the sex aggregation until the portfolio matures more, that we have more of the GEF 6 and GEF 7 portfolio to be reported on. So that's an element that I wanted to highlight, and we can definitely start to include the sex aggregated data in the AMR. But you will still see two different categories, if you will, the projects that are reporting just beneficiaries and the newer projects that will have the sex aggregated data. And it's something that I think across the board that's a practice we kind of have to follow, because it's just for lack of data points for GEF 5 projects to be able for us to report on that particular element. On the question from France, why the UNDP portfolio seems to have lower ratings, I think there are several reasons that we could put on the table. And one of the things that we have done in the report is to really look into projects that have less than moderately unsatisfactory as well as highly unsatisfactory and unsatisfactory ratings to get a little bit deeper dive into what those might be. Generally speaking, it could be the number of countries that the UNDP has had in the active portfolio are some more difficult countries in terms of the concentration of the Ldcf ratings, and that actually does have an impact on the ability of the portfolio to deliver per agency. On the Sscf, this is something that we can look into more into the future and perhaps include more detailed narrative on what it is that's impacting the performance of the portfolio into the future. On the, and I think, was it Denmark?
No?
Denmark?
Yes, on the land aspect of the target that it was not met. I can try to do it. Yes, on the question of the targets and the results, and the fact that land under resilient management was not at the 100% mark. What I'm going to say is, still speculative, but we are seeing this trend happen in the GEF Trust Fund. If you recall the discussion we had on the GEF Trust Fund and the target on landscape management, what we are seeing, around the world in terms of the costs of managing land and the competing claims over land, particularly in this impending food security crisis, it's actually taking place mostly in the developing countries that we work, is making perhaps our prior estimates and the track record that we have from earlier phases in what would it take to improve management, to reclaim land, and to avoid deforestation, much higher now. The price of land has been doubling every few years everywhere in the developing world. And the run for land for commodity production is becoming a complicated factor. With the recent developments that we all know have exacerbated this, will perhaps have an impact on our ability, or at least the ability of the money that we have available to claim more benefits per unit of investment. So, I mean, we want to do a deeper analysis on this, and we'll probably need to have some research done and bring data outside of the GEF that can help to clarify a bit this point. But I'm really struck by how coincidental these trends have been both on the adaptation funds as well as in the GEF Trust Fund. So I'll stop here. I think Shabu.
Yes, Nayer, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Par rapport à cette question de suivi des bénéfices environnementaux et même socio-économiques au niveau des interventions des femmes dans nos pays, je pense qu'on ferait mieux si on implique de plus en plus les institutions et techniques de recherche et de formation au niveau de nos pays, qui font des travail très important. Et de moins en moins, on constate que le Bureau indépendant d'évaluation des femmes est absent dans nos régions. Et donc, nous avons par exemple au niveau de ma circonscription, nous avons l'autorité du bassin du Niger. Comme vous savez, le bassin du Niger, ça concerne plus d'une dizaine de pays. Vous avez la commission du bassin du lac Tchad, vous avez le centre régional Agrimet, vous avez l'observatoire du Sahel et du Sahara. Donc, toutes ces institutions aujourd'hui travaillent aux côtés du SILS, aux côtés de l'EMOA. Vraiment, c'est des institutions, si on essaie de façon formelle, on établit des relations avec elles, avec un peu des efforts au niveau des pays et des agences, je pense que nous pouvons améliorer le suivi de toutes nos interventions. Je vous remercie.
Thanks so much. Thanks for your observation and recommendations. Any comments on your side, Chis? No. Okay, thanks. Thanks, Chis and Gustavo for this discussion. With this, I would like to invite Council to adopt a draft decision that is included in the document GEF/Ldcf Sccf/32/05. I see nobody raising their hand. Decision adopted. Thank you so much. With this, we finish agenda item number 6. I'll pass it to Nicolas so he can give us the instruction for what is coming up and the rest of the afternoon. Thanks. Over to you, Nico.
Thank you very much, Chair. So we are done with the morning session. We will go for lunch. We will resume at 2 p.m. with the agenda item 7, the progress report on the Ldcf and